Welcome, everyone, to this evening's community engagement meeting. We will be covering two topics, two connected programs. Two of our incentive programs to encourage the building of housing in particular geographies across the city of San Jose and in our downtown corridor. You'll be hearing from my colleague Banu San, and also Konstantin Voronin is here as well to answer some questions and assist Banu in her presentation. I'm Sarah Fields. I serve as one of three deputy directors for the housing department, and I will be here this evening to help facilitate questions and other information for the group. I'll be sharing some slides in just a moment. If you have questions across the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A function within the webinar. You can type your questions there, and I will be facilitating a Q&A once the presentation concludes. So with that, I will hand it over to Banu to introduce herself and begin presenting.
Thank you, Sarah. Are we recording the session? Because I don't
We sure
think
are.
It has started? Okay, I didn't notice that. Okay, let's see. And we're starting with the downtown part, I believe. Okay.
Yes.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Banu San. I'm one of the three deputy directors on the Production, Preservation, Asset Management, Rent Stabilization Program, and Inclusionary Housing divisions. And today we're going to go through the two incentive programs, as Sarah mentioned, that both of these items, along with a set of other items, are going to council on January 27th. So thank you for joining us. We're responding to the current housing and market conditions in San Jose. So council is going to be looking at several housing related items on, as I mentioned, on this Tuesday, and it includes proposals that are focused on housing production. There's a soft story retrofit pilot program to help preserve existing housing, and a set of tenant protection and tenant right updates under the city's rent stabilization framework. So these items reflect the housing's three core priorities, which is first, producing housing, especially helping projects that are already planned but stalled and are not able to move into construction. And then secondly, protecting existing housing, so homes people rely on today remain safe, livable, and affordable. And then third, supporting renters, including the strengthening of tenant protections and housing stability. So today's presentation focuses on housing production priority and the two incentive programs that support that goal. The goal is to increase overall housing supply by supporting market rate development, but also securing deed-restricted affordable homes that remain affordable over the long term. And many housing projects in San Jose are approved, but they never actually get built. And these incentive programs are really designed to help overcome those barriers so housing can move from paper to reality. And one program applies citywide, and the other one focuses especially on downtown San Jose. So right now I'm going to go through the downtown one. And with that, we can move to the next slide. Thank you. The Housing Department has presented the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance and announced multi-family housing and downtown office to residential conversion incentive programs. We had several meetings so far. There were virtual community meetings on October 9th and December 10th, and an in-person meeting that we held on January 14th. And we were really promoting the upcoming commercial downtown commercial to residential incentive program through the virtual community meetings that we held on January 8th and January 22nd. So we're going to go through that today. So the recordings of the virtual meetings, community meetings, are also on our website, and the memorandum that we're taking is already posted on the City Council's agenda website. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary of the current downtown incentive program, and really it's to help stimulate the high-rise new construction residential developments downtown, particularly in San Jose. And with that comes job growth and, transit use and supporting retail businesses and really increasing the vibrancy of the city center. And there are certain eligibility requirements currently under that program. First of all, naturally, it needs to be located in the downtown planned growth area. And it's really for projects that are eligible are for projects that are over 10 stories. And or at least 150 feet above street level. And they have to pass the first inspection within the first 12 months of obtaining building permit. There are 2 phases to this program. You can see them on the right here. The first phase is up to 100,000 units, and there were construction taxes that are waived 100% and a reduction in 50% reduction in parkland fees and zero inclusionary housing fees. The phase 2 is up to 3,078 units, again with similar incentives, but construction taxes 50% waived, and then parkland fees 30% reduced. Next slide. All right, so as a part of the cost of residential development study, which we took to council on December 8th, and per council's direction, we run this study every year. The city evaluated development feasibility in downtown San Jose. And the analysis found that constructing new higher density residential projects, including podium and tower buildings, are not financially feasible under current market and financial conditions. But at the same time, downtown San Jose continues to experience elevated office vacancy following shifts in the office demand after COVID. And given these conditions, the city evaluated whether existing office buildings could be repositioned as residential housing as an alternative to new construction. And the feasibility office to residential conversion was analyzed in detail, recognizing that not all office buildings are suitable for conversion. The analysis incorporated local market conditions as well as lessons learned from other jurisdictions that have implemented similar conversion incentive programs. So based on this evaluation, the staff estimates that targeted incentives could support the conversion of approximately around 500 residential units in the downtown area. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is, in addition to the program, this program is really designed to support and add on the office to residential conversion projects through construction-related fee and tax reductions. And they're really intended to help close the feasibility gaps for conversion projects that face high retrofit costs, financing challenges, and design constraints. So here is just a summary of some of the advantages of office to residential conversions. As we're seeing, it is 30% cheaper than just ground up new construction. It is faster, so up to 18 months, whereas new construction can take over 2 years. And then we're able to retain the primary structure and the building system. And office values are at historic lows due to vacancies since the pandemic. And then there are higher financing rates, which really call for shorter loan terms. So where remote work patterns are still, continuing. So the policy impacts of this is really four here that are mentioned: expanding middle-income housing units at affordable rents in downtown. And then we're able to gain annual tax revenue and downtown activity, and then demonstrate really a strong policy leadership in bringing in more housing stock, and then aligning our land use policy and capital markets to really catalyze these feasible projects. Next slide, please. This outlines the phase 1 and phase 2 of the downtown residential, the office to conversion project program. And as I mentioned, there's going to be fee and tax waivers, and that's summarized here for the phase 1 and phase 2. And there's no, under the updated program framework, there's no deed restricted affordability requirement for downtown conversion projects. The primary objective is really to increase overall housing supply downtown and activate vacant office buildings in near term. So phase 1 applies to the first 500 housing units created through eligible conversion projects. And then they have to meet certain eligible criteria, including location, minimum unit counts, permit timing requirements. And really it prioritizes the most feasible office to residential conversion projects that really support the near-term housing delivery downtown. And then phase 2 applies to the office to residential conversion projects that are beyond the 500 units, and the incentives there remain available, but at reduced levels compared to phase 1. This phase structure really allows the city to continue supporting the housing production while managing fiscal exposure over time. So it reinforces the time-sensitive nature of the program by just providing stronger incentives to the earlier projects that are ready to move forward. And the focus really remains on enabling housing delivery and increasing the residential activity downtown. Next slide, please. This is just the summary of what I mentioned, phase 1 and phase 2. And then there's the permit deadlines that you can see there. And the minimum unit size, number of units, which is 20. And then next slide. So although the program doesn't require deed-restricted affordability, analysis really shows that many converted units are expected to really rent at middle income levels. It really reflects the current downtown rent conditions rather than any sort of additional subsidy. As a result, the program is expected to deliver housing that's accessible to a range of households while significantly increasing overall housing supply downtown. And in addition to the housing production, the program supports downtown revitalization by activating vacant buildings, increasing residential presence, and strengthening long-term economic activity there. So together, these outcomes really position the office to residential conversion as a practical near-term strategy for addressing both housing needs and downtown vacancy challenges. Next slide, please. And then this slide just summarizes the overall impact of the downtown incentive program. And through targeted construction-related fee and tax reductions, the program is expected to support the creation of around 611 new housing units, and by enabling these conversions that are otherwise difficult to finance under current market conditions. And the city's participation is focused on the fee and tax reductions rather than direct subsidy. When viewed on a per unit basis, the level of public investment is relatively modest compared to the traditional housing subsidy programs, while still supporting a significant number of new homes. So beyond housing production, it's intended to activate vacant, as I mentioned, underutilized office buildings, and then increase residential presence downtown and contribute to long-term economic activity. So taken together, these outcomes position the downtown incentive programs as a targeted near-term strategy to address both housing supply and office vacancy challenges in San Jose. And that brings us to the end of the downtown incentive program. Sarah, are we moving to the next one and then taking questions after the second? Okay, so we'll move to the next program then. Okay, this is, oh, there it is. Okay, we can move to the next slide there. Again, this talks a little bit about what I mentioned previously, the cost of development study, where the multifamily incentive program really includes apartments projects located in cities' growth areas and urban villages. So these incentive programs are really designed to help move housing projects that have been planned or approved for several years, but haven't really moved into construction. And when we look back at recent development trends, we see that only a small share of proposed housing projects actually make it from application to construction. So that tells us that approvals alone aren't enough, and many projects still face financial or market barriers that prevent them from moving forward. So these incentive programs are one way the city is trying to address the gap and support getting more housing built. In addition to as I mentioned, this program, there's the downtown incentive programs as well, which builds on the existing tools and adds the ability on conversions. So we can move to the next slide. This is a summary of the community engagement we've done so far. We've had virtual community meetings on October 9th and December 10th, and in-person meeting on January 14th, as I mentioned, for the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance. And then We also held a meeting about this incentive program, very similar, same presentation on January 8th, and we're doing one today. And again, January 27th is the big day for many housing items, so we encourage you to attend and listen to that. And then all the recordings are on the website, as I mentioned in the other presentation. We can move to the next slide there. This slide focuses on the multifamily housing incentive program and what it has accomplished since it was first implemented. And since the program began, it has helped move forward multiple housing projects that had entitled or planned for years into active construction. In total, more than 1,400 homes are now moving forward as a direct result of the incentive program. And that includes 228 deed-restricted affordable homes, so which are integrated within primarily market rate developments rather than built as standalone affordable projects. This is important because it shows that the program is not simply approving projects on paper, but it's actually unlocking construction activity that would likely not have occurred under current market conditions. And these projects have already gone through city's planning and entitlement process, but were unable to proceed due to financing gaps, construction costs, feasibility challenges. In addition to the housing delivery, these projects have generated construction, jobs, related economic activity. And while job creation is not the primary goal of the program, it is a meaningful secondary benefit that reflects the broader economic impact of moving projects into construction. And overall, these results indicate that the program is functioning as intended. It is helping close the gap between project approval and project delivery, while also securing long-term affordable housing as part of the market rate development. Next slide. Thank you. So this slide similarly summarizes the phase one and of the multifamily housing incentive program and how it works today and what we're going to be proposing on January 27th. The phase one applies to the first 1,800 units citywide that meet the program eligibility requirements. Projects participating in phase one are required to include 5% deed restricted affordable units that serve up to 110% area median income. As part of the phase one incentive package, the eligible projects receive reductions in construction taxes and fees, including the building and structure tax, construction and demo tax, and eligibility is tied to a defined permit deadline, which helps ensure that incentives are directed to projects that are close to construction and positioned to deliver housing in the near term. So based on ongoing market conditions, the city is proposing to extend phase one. Construction costs continue to remain high, financing remains constrained, and many projects are that are otherwise ready to move forward need that additional time to finalize permits, secure funding. So the proposed extension would expand phase one to cover 3,600 units and extend the permit deadline to February 2027. And then importantly, the affordability requirements, incentive structure, and eligibility criteria remain unchanged. The extension is intended to provide additional runway for projects that are already in the pipeline while maintaining the program's original design and accountability measures. Next slide, please. The phase two of this program applies to projects that do not qualify under phase one incentives, continuing in phase two at a reduced level, applying only to the building and structure tax. Affordability requirements remain consistent, ensuring continued delivery of the deed-restricted affordable units. The phase structure really reinforces the time-sensitive nature of phase one, while allowing the city to continue supporting housing production over a longer horizon. Next slide. And we've reviewed several projects already that could move forward if the program is extended. With the extension, more than 2,000 additional homes could be built. This includes more than 100 affordable homes. And these estimates are really based on real projects, not projections alone. And then the next slide, this is the same slide as I showed in the other deck. Although we don't require deed-restricted affordability, necessarily underwriting for participating projects indicates that market rate units are largely serving middle-income households, those that are earning between 80 to 110% of area median income. And the chart on the right compares the proposed market rate rents by unit type to affordability benchmarks. Across studios and 3 bedrooms, rents generally fall within the ranges affordable to middle-income households, and is reflecting current market conditions rather than any additional public subsidy. And the table on the left provides the area median income thresholds for 4-person household to help contextualize these affordability ranges. And overall, this analysis demonstrates that the multifamily housing incentive program supported new construction is delivering market rate housing, and that's financially accessible to middle income households, while increasing housing supply in San Jose. And then that brings us to the end of this program. And Konstantin is here also. He's managing both programs, and we'll be able to take some questions now, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah, so you must have done an excellent job, or everyone's still absorbing the information because we don't have any questions as of right now. But we'll take a couple of minutes to let people think about the presentation a little bit, and please type your questions into the Q&A function. You should be able to find it at the bottom or the top of your screen, depending on if you're using a desktop or laptop or an iPad, how you're using your Zoom. Here, now we have some questions. Excellent. Here we go. And I will, just before we get into some of the questions, I'll remind everyone that these 2 incentive programs, along with proposed changes to the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance, the Mobile Home Rent Ordinance, and a pilot program around soft story retrofitting, will be coming to Council this coming Tuesday, January 27th. Of course, City Council meets at City Hall. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that. Okay, there's a question. We'll sort of take it in parts. The first is, are there planned incentive programs for other parts of the city aside from the geographic targeting in the multifamily housing program and the downtown incentive program? Any other geographies considered?
So I think if you could just clarify the question, whether it's about the similar programs that exist in other cities and other areas, or in other areas of San Jose.
I think it just means in other areas of San Jose, but all I got was, are there planned incentives for other parts of the city?
All right, so the downtown residential incentive program just covers the downtown core, the downtown growth area, and primarily because all the new high-rises you see built in San Jose are located in downtown. That's why the original downtown program just was created for those types of projects. But as you know, like right now in today's economic environment, we have a pretty significant office tower vacancy. And that's why we're trying to turn this problem into solution by converting empty office space into residential units that are much needed in the city of San Jose. And MAPE, Multifamily Housing Incentive Program, is a citywide program that can be utilized anywhere in the city, as long as it's one of the growth areas and as long as the project meets the minimum density standards.
Okay, and then there's a sort of follow-up question around that, which is, have these kinds of incentive programs worked in other places, in other cities, in the Bay Area, in California, in other regions?
Yes, there are, but the commercial to residential conversion program worked in many cities. Like the few prominent examples include New York and LA and Washington, D.C., where developers were able to convert not just hundreds of units, but dozens of thousands of units from a vacant open space or office space. And for multifamily housing incentive, there are also examples across the country that if you would like to email me after the meeting to learn more about those examples, I'll be able to share them with you.
Okay.
So, Sarah,
please.
The comment talks about why not require some truly very low income housing. And I just want to say that according to the developments that we've seen so far, they're not including very extremely low income units. It's not really penciling for market rate, but we are serving that population on the affordable housing gap financing program side. So we have our notice of funding availabilities, which we've published for the past, I believe, 5 years, over 400 million in funding, and we continue to do so. And to encourage and finance the development of affordable housing, new construction properties that serve extremely low and low income populations. And the production on that side is very similar in numbers, actually. We produce around 300 to 500 units a year through that program, which is similar to the inclusionary units, affordable units that have been produced on the market rate side as well annually. So I hope that helps on that side
Yes,
of
thank
the
you.
comment there.
And I'll just I'll sort of prompt another question here, which is, Banu started to address, why we're looking at these AMI bands within the inclusionary housing ordinance and within the incentive program within the IHO or complementary to the IHO. But a question about, isn't there a need for in lieu fees to support these more deeply affordable housing units? I'm not sure I'm sure both of you can answer this question. One of you maybe wants to jump in and talk about sort of the reduction or the sort of incentivizing out of in lieu fees through these different programs.
Go ahead, Konstantin, you can take that.
Yes, it's a good question. And yes, we would like to be able to generate enough in lieu fees from market rate developments and to be able to construct a meaningful number of affordable housing units. But in reality, the in lieu fees that we collect on a per unit basis from the market rate developments are actually much lower than the value of the affordable units that those developers provide on site. And the developers generally tend to build units on site, especially if it benefits them in other ways. For example, they can take advantage of a density bonus or like builder's remedy law. So I think the fiscal impact, if you measure it in like number of units built, is much greater from developers building the units rather than us collecting those in lieu fees.
And I think we mentioned in our previous inclusionary housing ordinance presentation that the fees that were generated in the past 5 years, Constantine, I'm trying to remember, it's 40 million something, is not really a very big significant source of funding for our gap financing program on the affordable housing side. Really, a majority of our funding source, the big bulk, comes from low mod, which is the repayment of our current asset management portfolio, the loan portfolio, and that's really what's been funding our affordable housing developments over the past 5 to 8 years. So those fees are not a very significant percentage that represent the funding sources for the affordable housing program.
Right. Actually, Banu, thank you for mentioning it. Those funds that we received in the form of in lieu fee, you're right, it was not like very significant number. And also we have to mention that most of that amount came from just 5 projects. And all of those projects were for sale developments. So basically, and what we are looking at today, the both downtown residential incentive program and multifamily housing incentive program, they only cover rental development. So whatever we're doing here is not going to impact potential in lieu fee revenues from for sale projects.
Excellent. I'll remind everyone that there are 5 sort of primary focus areas of the city. One of them is building more housing, and it's building more housing, of course, at all levels. These programs really focus in these higher AMI bands within market rate development. And as Banu mentioned, the housing department puts out a NOFA on a fairly regular basis that supports more deeply affordable, those lower AMI bands, housing at that level. So there are programs that address each of the different levels of housing, and these incentive programs are around market rate housing as well as housing within those inclusionary housing bands. That said, I will say thank you to my colleagues. We don't have any more questions in the chat, but I will remind all of you that You're welcome, of course, to come to the City Council meeting next Tuesday, January 27th in the afternoon, and provide public comment there. And if you would like to submit a question, or excuse me, submit public comment prior to the meeting, you can do so by emailing the city clerk by 8 o'clock in the morning, the day of the meeting. This is a question. Sorry, I was about to wrap up, but with just one more question and then we'll close it out. There's a question about what was the initial purpose of the IHO and when did it begin? So, I'll just, Banu, I think you want to unmute and share a little bit about the history of the IHO and sure.
Let me see. I have to dig that up. Question. Let me see here.
So while you're digging up the history, I'll say that inclusionary housing is a policy that many cities employ as a way of including, as the name implies, a portion of affordable housing within a city's market rate development. So within our city, the proposal that's being heard on January 27th is to include 15% affordable units within a market rate development at AMI bands between 60 and 110%. Banu, do you want to share a little bit more?
And Konstantin, you can jump into, because I'm not an expert on the history of inclusionary housing, but it was first adopted in 2010 and amended in 2021. In November of 2014, the City Council adopted Affordable Housing Impact Fee, AHIF as we called it, a resolution establishing the AHIF program. And that program transitioned to Affordable Housing Impact Fee Fund, or the AHIF fund, and then became the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance back in 2019. And that the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance, also referred to at the time as inclusionary zoning, is a land use restriction, and it requires developers to set aside a certain number of units for low-income households. And so that's the history I have. I don't know, Konstantin, if you have any other information, but that's I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think in general the purpose of the IHO is to just make sure that we not only build in housing for households that can afford to pay market rate rents, but also we also including the other income groups in the same developments, the same geographic areas, just to promote social diversity and make sure that we have sustainable environment or a city for households of any income level.
Yeah, and back to the AMI question. I mean, when we looked at the past from 2019 to 25, which we had data to be able to study for the IHO, and there were 43 projects that were completed, and 28 of those projects built affordable units, and more than 56% of those 28 projects had inclusionary units with between 60 to 110 area median income band. So this is really based on the patterns that we've seen. So the IHO changes you're seeing is based on what we have seen in the past 5 years. Plus, there's changes that are made per the council direction as well, the March and June budget directions.
Excellent.
I would recommend that if you have more inclusionary housing questions, to watch the webinars that we've posted on the Housing Engagement Community page site. They're all recorded and we've made several presentations on the IHO changes there.
Excellent. So if you go to the city website and you find the housing department section, it's within the resource library of the housing department's website. And with that, I will say thank you very much to Konstantin and to Banu and to the members of the public who joined us this evening. And I imagine we'll see many of you or hear some of your public comments on Tuesday at City Hall. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.